Hello and welcome back to English with Dry. This is Mr. Azad. We are continuing with our AQA Language Paper 1, Section A. And in this video, we are going to answer question 4. So if you've been keeping up with the videos, you would have seen me do question 1, 2 and 3 under time conditions. We've maintained these timings and now we've been left with 24 minutes and 59 seconds. We're going to round it up to 25 minutes and we're going to try answer this question 4 in 25 minutes. Remember, it's worth 20 marks, so it's a lot. It's half of this paper, so it's important. It's half of this section, sorry. It's important that we do as well as we can on this question. So the question is, use lines 23 and 40, which during our reading, we already annotated. A student said, although the character of Charles seems unusual and an unlikely person to take in a young child, the writer makes him seem kind and caring. To what extent do you agree? So we're going to try and tailor our response to agree with the student that Charles is kind and caring. But what I'm also going to try and do is sort of disagree with the student to also show you that you can disagree to some extent too. So that's what we'll try to do. So I'll do what I did in the previous video. I will write my response and I'll try to speed it up for you so you don't have to watch me write it up. And then by the end, I will explain exactly how I processed my response. So, off we go. So that's the end of my response. That's as much time as I'm going to give myself. I've saved 2 minutes in the exam, hopefully to use towards question 5. However, I do think it's better off used to read your response for question 4, just to get an idea of whether or not your response makes sense. So I'll do that. I won't use a timer for this, but hopefully it won't take too long. So just to read my response, I agree with the statement to some extent and believe that whilst Charles seems unusual, he's ultimately a kind and caring character. So that's my point, that I agree with the student. It's always good to start with this kind of statement that you agree, to show the examiner that you are working with the question that you've been given. And I've suggested that he is ultimately a kind and caring character. The writer uses positive verbs, just going to annotate that as my technique, to describe the way Charles hopes to adapt his life for the baby, clearly showing his caring and considerate nature. So I'm making quite a nice link between the technique and the fact that it shows he's caring and considerate. Although the reader may consider Charles to be an unlikely person to take in a young child, he shows his readiness when he claims he will be more careful and when also buy some smaller chairs. Both sentences, that's my evidence from the extract that I'm using, and that will be the evidence that I'll focus on. Both sentences depict the positive way Charles is dealing with the situation at hand. The adjective careful conveys that he is aware that a baby requires safety, stability, and caution. So I'm beginning my analysis now. Qualities that Charles may not currently possess, but ones he is willing to acquire. The reader will feel a sense of relief in knowing that Charles will not abandon the baby. Instead, he's clearly stepping into the role of a guardian for the baby and will look after the baby for the foreseeable future, shown in his desire to buy smaller chairs. The writer successfully convinces the audience that Charles is a kind and caring individual by ending on a hopeful tone, forcing us as readers to put aside our initial concerns that Charles is not able to look after the baby. Now, that's my analysis, and I'll make a link back to the point by making this statement. The writer successfully convinces the audience that Charles is a kind and caring individual. So I'm just going to put an L there, and that's my link. And the way I can be evaluative, because that's what we need to be. We need to be evaluative, is by using the word successful or successfully. And I'm suggesting that the writer has successfully done something, and in this case has convinced us that he is a kind and caring individual. So you can see that this is how I sort of structure my response. And I did say initially that when answering this question, you can agree with the student, but also, and sometimes often the higher end of responses, can disagree with the student and prove how. And this is what I do in this paragraph. However, I am also aware that some may disagree with the student's statement to some extent. So I'm making my point about disagreeing. Although Charles is willing to help the baby by the end of the extract, there is still an overwhelming sense that he is far too unusual and not ready to have a baby in his care. The writer uses a semantic field of danger to depict Charles's incapability to take this child in and look after it. I should say it. So this is why it's important to read your work. Phrases such as very edge, nearly killed, and not safe. So I've got my evidence from the extract. All convey an element of danger. I'm going to begin my analysis that the baby could find itself in whilst under the care of Charles. The phrases also create a sense of unease, forcing the reader to imagine that perhaps Charles is not the right person to care for this baby, and the unusual nature in which he is described is very fitting. The writer continues to fuel the idea that Charles is an unlikely person to take in a young child, when Charles claims he understands books far more readily than he understands people. So I've done something here. I want to strengthen my argument, and I'll do that by using this phrase. The writer continues to do something with the idea. This clearly depicts him as someone who is unable to understand emotions and could possibly suggest he lacks the compassion required to understand the baby. So I've introduced a new piece of evidence in my response, so you can always use more than one piece of evidence, and then I begin another layer of analysis. The writer portrays him as a character who is not well endowed with a natural parental instinct, something a baby requires. The writer successfully splits opinion amongst her readership, regarding the characteristics of Charles Maxim and whether or not he will be able to fulfill the parent-guardian role for this baby. So again, I've come back to this link, and I've said that the writer successfully does this in splitting opinion between the statement made by the student in regards to whether or not he can look after the baby and whether or not he's kind and caring. So hopefully what I should show you is that this response is doable in the 25 minutes that you give yourself. Of course, it's very important to stick to some sort of timing so you give each question an adequate time for response. And I'll just quickly show you what my exam responses look like, just to show you what you could be aiming to do. So question 3 and question 4. So as I said, I've got 2 minutes now to carry over to question 5. I hope this has been helpful. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.